Good day. Today is the 16th of September, 1997, and we're here for the Heritage Series with Mr. VILMOS ZSIGMOND, ASC. Hello, Vilmos. How are you?
Hello, everybody. I think I'd like to be here. This is the second time now, so maybe
It-
it's going to be easier the second time.
oh, well, last time we were here, it was only a few weeks ago. You gave us a lovely life interview and told us how your adventures of getting to this country from Hungary and going through your initial stages and your history and your arc of your career, and it was fascinating. But today you've consented to talk to us about a technical interview about how you make movies, and I'm really pleased you're giving us this time. Thank you. What we'd like to start with, and you said in our other previous interview, was that when you started in the motion picture business, you started doing, after you got from Hungary to Hollywood, you started doing no budget, low budget, zero budget movies that first, your passion for movies. You had a family. You had to support. I mean, you had to have this passion to make movies. What was that drove you? Was there something that you felt you had to get going?
I actually, as I earlier I said I became a cameraman by accident actually in Hungary because I could not go into universities because of my upbringing. I was a member of a bourgeois family, so I was really thrown into working in a factory, and then eventually it led me to cinematography, and then I realized that what a mistake would have been in my life if I would have become an engineer or anything else, because I'm pretty sure I would not have been happy in my life. Becoming a cinematographer, it just made me very happy because I felt that to be a cinematographer, it's a real great job. It's you have to know a lot about a lot of things, and but the life could be so adventurous because it involves a lot of travel. It involves to meeting a lot of people, working together with a lot of collaborators, which is always exciting, to work with different directors all the time, different actors. So it's an exciting life, which I would have missed if luck would not have thrown into this profession. And as far as the beginning, when I got to the United States, I had a very hard start, like I guess everybody else has, who comes here and doesn't know the language, and you have to start from scratch basically. And that's where I really started. I started first of all, I started to learn English, and once I learned English enough, to be able to communicate people, I started to do little movies like 60 millimeter movies, and I had a Bolex, and people actually hired me, mostly UCLA students, hired me to do their real projects, like real documentaries, educational films, and all that. So
Mm-hmm.
I was basically that time a one-man band, because I just needed a camera, and we shot mostly exteriors, and it was not much budget. And then and I suggested to people, why don't we shoot interiors? I said, wow, we cannot afford that. So, well, all you need is a couple of lights. And then, I bought some lights, and we started to do interiors also. And I remember that I bought a whole set of Garnell lights
Mm-hmm.
in those days, which were very low wattage, 300 watt lights, and I could boost them up with a transformer. And with 6 or 8 Garnell lights, I could light up pretty big interiors actually, with just plugging into the fuse box at homes. And that suddenly, I got a name that there is a Hungarian cameraman here who can do miracles with no money at all. So each time actually started to make money with my little films, I always turned it into more equipment, and I bought an Ariflex, a 35 millimeter Ariflex, and Technoscope came in that time, in Italy. So I converted my Ariflex to Technoscope, and suddenly I was doing low budget features with a 35 millimeter Ariflex converted to Technoscope, which was blown up into anamorphic release prints.
Oh.
And I had my own lighting equipment. I mentioned the Garnell lights, and I had tripods, I had reflectors, and it all basically fit into one station wagon. And it was really a miracle. I can't even understand today that how could I do so many features with just one station wagon load equipment, and they all looked, I don't say it looked good, I don't say it looked great, but it was exposed, you get an exposure, and the acting was bad, the directing was bad, everything was bad, and the photography was not really that great, but it was a starting point for me. I was experimenting with films which I didn't know about. In Hungary we had different films, and so I got into the point where I started to make little money with these low budget features, and later on, more people started to know about me, and got into to better movies.
Mm-hmm. Now this is over a period of time, though. It wasn't just 6 months or so. This was several years.
Yeah, talking about years and years.
Yes.
I was actually working in a photo lab, doing blow-ups, black and white pictures for professional photographers, and that was my day job, and I was making $2.50 an hour.
Oh.
And each time somebody wanted to take me out of the lab, to do some work outside, I charged them $2.50 an hour because I love to make movies more than doing laboratory work in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that was the start. But eventually it led to things like suddenly to do commercials.
Ah.
And this was a story. How did I become a commercial cameraman? I started to be an assistant cameraman for Jimmy Crabe.
Jimmy, yes.
At Film Fair.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually found me at NABAT. All the cameramen who could not get into the IA in those days, they actually went to NABAT.
Mm-hmm.
NABAT was a sort of television union. A lot of non-young people actually ended up working under the NABAT label. So that's when I met Jimmy Crabe, and then Jimmy gave me a job as an assistant cameraman. And he was such a nice guy, and I didn't know much about the equipment in those days. It's not about the equipment what they used in commercials, like they used the high-speed Mitchell. And I never in my life even seen the high-speed Mitchell. And here I am, the assistant cameraman, all the boxes coming, to the set. And I said, Jimmy, I don't know how to put this together. There's no way that. So Jimmy said, don't worry about it, I help you. And Jimmy knew everything.
Sure.
Jimmy was great. So he was showing me how to put it together, and all I had to do really just load the magazines afterwards, which I learned how to do it, and then focusing and all that, which I was good at it. So that's how I started with Jimmy. And then the same company, a year later, called me up and said, Behind the Bind, there's this commercial which we wanted Willis Lapinex to shoot it. And Willis was really well known for his incredible handheld camera work in the early days of Hollywood, and I was there. And they asked me that, how is your handheld shot? I mean, can you do what Jim Willis Lapinex can do? And they showed me a couple of his commercials which were handheld shots for 60 seconds. And I said, I don't see why I could not do this. I mean, sure I can do that. Are you sure that you? Yeah, let's try it. So they gave me that commercial, which was a commercial about paper towels, Z towel.
Mm-hmm.
That was the commercial, and I actually had to do this one-shot commercial when with a piece of Z towel, I could go all around the kitchen and actually wipe up all the wet spots and went all around the kitchen and showed that how absorbing this towel was and all that. And it was quite a difficult shot, but I succeeded with that one, and they put me right away on payroll.
Excellent.
They gave me actually a retainer, which meant that I was actually became a staff member
With Film Fair.
With Film Fair, and I remember, I thought I made a great deal actually, because they paid me $100 a day.
Well, better than $250 an hour.
I know, but I didn't know that time, guys like Jimmy Crabe and all those people made $500 a day more. I didn't know that, and I felt that I could do the same job that those guys were doing, So I made a I made a good deal, and they actually thought that deal for them was really great, because then they said that every year they're going to give me a $25 raise, and I signed up for 3 years. So after the third year, I got $175 a day. So it was enough money to buy a house.
Yes.
For my family and all that, and that's how I started, in big Hollywood. And of course, I didn't even. I was dreaming about big feature films in those days, but that was coming, much later. I had to prove it first that I can do commercials, right? And then John Astin came up with a short film, idea Prelude, and I did that, and we got nominated for an Academy Award with that short film. And now in these days now, I already used a lot of equipment, in commercials especially. Money was not really a problem.
No.
They needed actually equipment. In fact, I taught them, I taught Filmfare, for example, that when I got there and I started to do commercials, they really relied mostly on the sunshine.
Mm-hmm.
And we never took any lighting equipment with us on location. And sometimes we waited hours for sunshine, because of the clouds. And most of the shots in a commercial are very tight, like a headshot, like an insert.
Product shot. Mm-hmm.
And I said that, why don't you bring lighting equipment? I could be shooting right now, it's waiting for the clouds. With a couple of lights, I could do it. I said, really, but it's too expensive. What is expensive? Well, we have to hire a gaffer and light. I said, that's peanuts for if you compare the loss of time and the overtime that you have to pay. So I said, okay, they said, okay, let's buy some lighting equipment. So then we started to buy, lighting equipment and started to use them, exteriors, and they loved it, and then later on, when soft lighting came into commercials, we needed to buy some more equipment, for interiors, and the style was such that they had to buy the latest equipment. And then HMIs came in, and we started to use HMIs. So this all got into the point where I started to use more and more equipment.
Well, even in those days, were you looking for a look, a soft light, a hard light look? Was there a particular lighting style that you developed?
Well, basically I learned black and white photography actually in Hungary, and so I had a tendency to use hard light. Hard light really doesn't mean, hard, doesn't necessarily mean hard. For me, a hard light is, like sunshine coming through a window. Mm-hmm. That's hard light, but it's beautiful. Mm-hmm. It's beautiful, it bounces off from the white walls, and it gives you nice fill light from the walls, and the interiors also, when you have light sources, basically it's hard light, what I use, because that's, for me, that was more realistic than what was in those days is the soft lighting technique. It was easy to shoot in soft light because, first of all, actors look better in soft light, and it's easier to create a soft light environment than a hard light environment. Mm-hmm. You have to know about lighting when you use hard light, and that's what I learned in Hungary for 4 years, and that was my forte. So that's what I kept doing. Of course, when they wanted soft light, I had to do it. Commercials. They wanted it, so I didn't mind to do that. But when it came to features, all I did really is realistic lighting with mostly hard light, and then some soft light,
So the technique, though, that you used for the commercials was what was called for the commercial. What each commercial needed was a look that you when found that look for the commercials.
Commercials were great because each director had their own ideas, to create a different look, and that was a good learning process for me because every commercial was like shooting a mini feature, in 1 day or 2 days, and they have to devise actually a certain look for that, and that was a good experience for me. It was a good training exercise for me. So that later on, paid off when I really started to do big features. I learned always to think about that every scene is a different scene. Every movie is a different movie. So it's every movie has its own life, and it has to be treated differently.
You talked about Prelude, where you got a break and did a small feature and got some notices. That brought you more work. That brought you more notice. What happened then?
Well, Prelude was nominated for an Academy Award. We didn't win actually because they cheated us actually because our short subject was really a live short. How do you call that? It was a story,
Mm-hmm.
and they threw us actually into the documentary category. And it was a terrific documentary that year which won. So we could not won, but if they would have put us into the right category to the live short subject, we could have won.
Mm-hmm.
But anyhow, it got a lot of attention with studio people, producers at Universal Studios, and so I got some offers that time, and which was helped by that the first offer really came from Peter Fonda, who did Hired Hand,
Mm-hmm.
which was his first feature film.
Oh, we're here at Panavision today, and we're actually in the lobby of the theater, and so people are going through. Come on, you got to do stuff. Go ahead. So
This is my little time, to have a little sip of coffee from that wonderful cappuccino maker at Panavision.
Panavision was very gracious in lending us their lobby to the theater in their new building here in DeSoto. So Peter Fonda became interested in you, and he offered you some work.
Yes, and it was. It's everything is so interesting in Hollywood. That how you get your job. It's amazing. That how much luck is involved actually. I mean, too, you need some talent also, but luck is very important. When you get jobs and as I mentioned earlier in my first interview, actually, that we did a lot of work together with Laszlo Kovács, my
Mm-hmm.
friend. We still are friends since 1952. Actually, it's like how many years now? It's like 45 years.
Like a brother.
I mean, it's an unbelievable. We are like brothers, and we helped each other all the way through the early years. Because if I got a job and I was busy, I passed it over to him. He did the same thing for me, and if both of us were free, then we worked together always. I was gaffing for him, he was gaffing for me. He was my assistant, and many times we were just doing the pictures. The whole crew was him and me.
And that was it.
And there was this funny situation once, when Eastman Kodak came and visited us on a tiny little nothing picture we were doing, and Eastman Kodak came and said we were interested what you are doing, and said, me? I mean, who am I? I mean, I'm not even doing any important things. And they said, well, we are looking for the future.
Oh.
You know that you are going to be, somewhere in the future. And it was so nice, to feel that Eastman Kodak actually trusted us that we are going to have a future. And another occasion, somebody came and I was alone on the set. And they asked me that, where is your crew? And I answered that he's out for lunch. And then I said, so it was my crew, one man.
One man crew.
Did everything, and it was amazing what we could do, just the two of us, It was like home movie time basically, but did it on a bigger scale, It was a low budget feature, and we did it like, it was a home movie.
What a duo! What a team!
So anyhow, but I wanted to get into it is that since we were helping each other through the years, I got Peter Fonda's picture basically because Laszlo was not available.
Ah.
Laszlo did Easy Rider.
Yes.
With Peter Fonda, Dennis Hopper, Jack Nicholson.
Mm-hmm.
And when Peter Fonda wanted to do his movie, Laszlo was busy. I think he was doing 5 Easy Pieces.
Mm-hmm.
I don't exactly remember, but I think that was it. And Laszlo said that, hey, why don't you use Vilmos? He's better than I am. So that we used to say that for all around Hollywood always. If I was not available, I said, take Laszlo. He's much better than I am. You will be so happy with him. So he helped each other's career, you know, tremendously.
Yes.
By helping each other, not working against each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we didn't have a competition between us, basically, you know.
It was a complementary competition.
Yes, it was great.
So
I got this movie with Peter Fonda.
That was The Hired Hand.
Which was probably a milestone, you know, for me, because this was first picture which spent nearly $1 million, and it was a good cast. We had Warren Oates, and Werner Bloom, and the picture turned out quite nice. Actually, it was not commercially very successful, but certainly artistically was an eye opener. Actually, in Hollywood, that you know. These kids, you know, they call us kids, you know, they can do a movie for under $1 million, and look how it looks, how great it is, you know. I mean, we did all kind of things, you know, in that movie, like, you know, Peter Fonda had all these great ideas, you know. Once we were started to line up a shot, and the storm came in, and we had a lot of lightning, and Peter said, "Can we shoot the lightning? Can we shoot the lightning?" I said, "Sure, we can shoot the lightning, we just have to catch it." But how do you catch the lightning, right? So what we did, we set up the camera, and we put Peter Fonda just out of frame. And when the lightning happened, he stepped into the frame, you know, and did whatever he had to do. So we could basically incorporate the lightning with him in it. So, because otherwise it would be just like a stock shot, you know.
Yes.
And in those days, we didn't have special effects, you know. We could not put the lightning in later or something like that. That was unheard of, you know, to do that. And you know, it was great to work with Peter Fonda because he never directed anything before. He was a very intelligent person, but never directed anything before. He just acted before. And the first 2 weeks, I had to set up all the shots and explain it to him, you know, that why it has to be shot from here. Why in the over shoulders you cannot cross the directional line. And he could not understand that for a while because, I mean, it was new for him.
Screen direction,
So
yes.
Why can't I just shoot it there? It looks best. I said, because it won't cut.
Yes.
And I said, why do you mean it won't cut? You splice it together, it won't cut. What do you mean? I said, Peter, look at other movies. The good movies, they always follow the rules. This is one of the rules, the screen direction rule. You don't want to really cross over the line unless it's really necessary, and you have to be very clever how to do that. You know? You can do it, but you have to figure it out how you do that. So he learned so much in 2 weeks that after the 3rd week, when I started to line up a shot, I said, "Vilmos, stop it. I'm going to line up this shot now, you know. I'm going to do this, you know." So, and I was so happy that he learned so much in 2 weeks that he actually could really take over and became the director the rest of the show, you know.
Well, so even in those early days, were you working with filtration, with lens filtration, or with flashing film, or any of those other techniques that you've been known for?
Well, I learned the technique actually way back in Hungary, and then even that Hungary was a pretty poor state in a sense of when it comes to equipment and things, but we used filters a lot, you know. In black and white, we used all kind of filters. We used graduated filters. I mean, we knew about filtration. So from day one, actually, I was trying to use filters for different reasons. So that was not new for me, and I mean that helped us a lot, you know, with Laszlo, because we technically were very experienced, actually. All we needed is a break, and all we needed to learn English, and all we needed just to get the right jobs. And so we were familiar, you know, with filters. And you know, on Peter Fonda's movie, I don't remember using a lot of technical things, you know, because that picture didn't really need it. It needed a very realistic approach to things. But you know, occasionally darkening the sky with the polarizer filter and or the graduated filter. I mean, we did all those things from the very beginning. And of course, you know, after Peter Fonda's film, actually, I got McCabe and Mrs. Miller, where it was not a totally different ball game. No, it was actually I was working with a director who, in those days, actually, I mean, he was very, very experimental. You know, Robert Altman was really, really, you know, he didn't want to do anything the way other people did before. So he wanted to search for something new, something different. And when the problem came up, you know, that how do we tell a story which happened 100 years ago? And we sat down and we talked about it, and we decided that we want to make the picture look like old, faded, sepia tone pictures in color, but the color should be faded, should be like if they had a color film in those days, like before 1900, that's the way it would look today. So that was the whole idea, to develop a style which would actually reflect the oldness to it, and should have a certain charm to it, so sort of romantic quality to it. And that's when we decided to do flashing, which in those days nobody did in Hollywood actually. There was only one film which I saw, which was flashed, was done by Freddie Young, the Englishman.
Is that where you?
And anyway, became very, very friendly. You know, later on we met a lot of times, and I read an article in the Cinematographer magazine about how he flashed the film on the Deadly Affair movie, which the reason he flashed the film actually there was to save lighting, because by flashing the film you needed much less lighting, because the film, the lens, the camera saw into the darkness more, so we didn't have to light as much. So that when I made some tests, I also realized that by flashing the film, we could increase the speed of the film. Which today we cannot do that somehow, you know, because today's films are totally different. So
they've incorporated all the techniques you were using.
Yeah, they have a totally different technique now in films, you know, to get the speed. But in those days, the flashing, which was pretty similar to the latensification process, which still photographer used a long time ago, it gave you more speed. You had to use less lighting, and also it gave you an incredible softer look, because it deteriorated the sharpness a little bit and the contrast, and gave you a totally different look than people were used in those days. If you think about those technical, beautiful color pictures.
Color saturated, deep, rich, yes.
Vibrant pictures, you know. And we wanted to work just the opposite. We wanted to make this picture look totally different.
This was 52, 54, was it the film stock that
around
that time?
I think it was maybe, was it 52, 51st?
Perhaps.
I know that the ASC number was not more than 50.
Yeah, very slow, right. And then by increasing the ASA, you were able to get the speed up to maybe 100 or so? Does that
yes,
feel about right?
In fact, you know, in reality, we actually almost like with the look of the picture what we wanted to get, because we wanted to have this underexposed, grainy look. So we could actually basically rate it to 100 ASA, actually. Of course, the result was, you know, that very grainy, very old-looking thing which the
gaslight look or something.
Hated it, you know. And but we loved it. We loved it because it did look different, and it was very important for us also, because think about it. We were shooting anamorphic now. This would then anamorphic lenses were 4.5, 5, 6 t-stop. And shooting in Vancouver in the middle of the winter.
The light was low anyhow.
We didn't have exposure until 10 o'clock in the morning.
No.
And Altman wanted to shoot at 9 o'clock in the morning. And one morning he says, let's start shooting. I said, Robert, see this is the light meter. The needle doesn't move. There's no exposure. He said, why send it to the lab, and if it doesn't turn out right, we will reshoot it again. So I said, all right, okay. So next morning, footage comes back and it was great, because what we didn't realize until then that by flashing the film and pushing the film at the same time, we got up into 200 ASA. And we had exposure where the needle didn't show us that we had exposure. So from that point on, we kept underexposing the film all the way through the picture. You know?
Kept seeing how far you could go.
Right.
Now, did you do the flashing in post or in?
We did it actually in post, but before the developing.
Okay.
So that means that we shot on the film and sent it to the lab. They immediately put the flashing on and developed it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the best way to do it, because that tiny little layer of exposure that you are putting on the film, it really works if you develop it right away. If you wait a day or two for developing, it has a tendency that that little exposure will disappear, like you didn't flash the film at all. So that's why post-flashing is always works better than pre-flashing.
So when you talk about post-flashing, what would be the right term? A 10% flash, 10% foot candles? I mean, how did you call it?
Well, the laboratories basically actually decided eventually when everybody started to flash in Hollywood, like 5 years later, they decided, to call, if let's say, if I would expose a white card normally, we would call that 100% flash.
Okay.
So 10% of that would be 10% of the density
Mm-hmm.
on the negative. So that's the way we try to figure this out, that just to name something.
Just to name it, yes.
So that's how we started. And in McCabe and Mrs. Miller, many times we flashed as much as 25%.
Oh, that much.
Yeah, it depended on the scene. If it was a contrasty scene, we could do more flashing. If it was less contrasty scene, we had to do less flashing.
So you shifted for the scene, for the look.
We had to basically decide each scene what percentage flashing we should really use.
So it was much more complex than just saying 10% flash. You had to judge each sequence was important.
It was important. It's just like lighting, when you light and you decide how much fill light you want to use in the scene. Sometimes you will not use any fill light because that's the effect what you want. But sometimes you use more fill light because you want a flatter picture, or it's like it's an overcast day, you are not going to go too contrasty. So you are going to use more fill light. And so anyhow, the percentage of the flashing and on the long goodbye, which was actually the third picture what I did with Altman, we went as far as 50% flashing.
Really?
In some of the things which I thought it's going to look like. I thought it's going to be a disaster, but Altman insisted on. Insisted on, said, "Don't worry about if it's not going to look right. I tell you what's going to look like." And he was a great experimenter, and I really enjoyed working with him because I learned a lot from him. Because you have to be courageous, to do things what other people don't do. And sometimes maybe you do the bad thing, but occasionally you luck out and you do something which everybody's going to love,
So this brought you a distinctive look, and everyone wanted to try it and experiment with it. That sounds, again, really courageous. I mean, you described you got to try something really out there to get a brand. And is that what happened to you? This became the VILMOZ ZSIGMOND look?
After this picture, I did Images. Images had a totally different look. Susanna York was actually the actress, and we didn't flash as much on that one, just maybe 10%. We did because of convenience, because again you have to use a little bit less lighting in the dark areas. And the long goodbye, we went crazy with camera movements, which we already experimented in Images. We had a sequence there which was like a dream sequence, where we moved the camera in all directions. We put the camera on a small G-bar and we went up and down and right and left and zoom in and zoom out. And it was great for the dream sequence. And but then when we did the long goodbye, Altman said, "Okay, now remember the sequence what we shot in Images. the whole movie is going to be shot.
Oh, that's almost. I wanted to ask you how you felt about framing. Do you change the framing for each what each motion picture calls for? Like one might be more static, another one might be more movement. How do you find the frames that you like? Is it do you start at one eye level and work up and down? How do you approach it?
I mean, we have to talk about composition. We have to talk about camera movements. Composition is pretty much a feeling. Actually, like you study a lot of painters. Who frame things in a different way. Each picture is framed differently, and you sort of. Feel like that the story is told actually not only with colors but with composition also, and it's a very important thing to develop your own style in compositions, and everybody has a different feeling about that, and I would compose things differently than Gordon Willis would or Conrad Hall. It's like it's a feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and other people either appreciate it or maybe don't like it. They will say, "Well, I would not have done it this way," but this is what we are basically stuck with it with our own idea of that. This camera move is about the same thing. That a certain sequence needs actually certain camera moves. And a camera move also is good because it gives you a third dimension in movies. The creating the third dimension is very important in movies because, as we know, movies are basically the movie screen is two-dimensional, like a still photograph or a painting. Now, in order to feel the depth, we have to create the depth, and you can create the depth with lighting. And then you can create a depth with moving the camera, which the painters cannot do, still photographers can do, movies can do. Because once you start moving the camera, let's say sideways or going up or down, suddenly you see a depth in a picture. You see three dimension, actually, which is not there, but you feel it. You see it that way. So that was the experiment basically in The Long Goodbye. By moving the camera in each direction, he found out when the whole picture was cut together and viewed it, that we never seen a picture before which had this three-dimensional feeling all the way through without using 3D lenses or 3D cameras. We created a third dimension.
Mm-hmm. Did you place a lot of foreground pieces as well to?
We didn't really have to actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's nice to have foreground pieces to go through because that really enhances the third dimension. But we just shot the movie like it was another movie, except we kept moving the camera. Whether it was needed or not,
Mm-hmm.
And many people criticize it, of course, Always, you do something experimental, they will say, "Oh God, I saw a movie, it was terrible." But the funny thing was that the National Film Critics, at the end of the year, they gave me the best photography award actually at the end of the year. And I didn't think it was that great photography. Personally, I didn't think it was that great. But it was new. It was something different. And many times critics would award something new. Whether it's good or bad, it's new.
Well, of course, we're talking days before the Steadicam and before all these cranes where everyone's moving all over the place. That any camera movement was considered a big deal. This is very important, and so to unhinge the camera and to move it around a lot was remarkable. Were you doing the operating at the same time for these movies?
In my early movies, I operated a lot. The union didn't let me to operate in those days. They really came after us a lot, all the new generation cameramen. We all operated our cameras, but many times they, like Herb Aller would come onto the set or somebody, and if saw me operating, they called us in front of a board, and really bawled you out, you know, for not letting an operator operate the camera.
Oh my goodness.
And it was so hard actually, and they were so hard on me one time, you know, in a board meeting, you know, that I decided I will never ever in my life go in front of a board again. I mean, they can maybe just get 10 people, or I don't know, just grab me and they can forcefully take me there, but I will never ever, you know, go and be. And it was a terrible feeling, you know.
I'll bet.
You know, it's a terrible feeling. And I did understand the union's position, you know, that by us operating the camera, we are trying to eliminate the operator's job, which is true actually in a way that if I operate the camera, we don't need an operator on the set. And they did it in Europe in those days. That's the way we were brought up in Europe, that we operated our cameras.
Mm-hmm.
And then but also, you know, if you operate your own camera, you have a tremendous control about everything. You know, you are controlling everything then in photography, and it's very difficult to give out that power from your hand. You know, many directors like to operate.
Oh, of course.
Because they don't want to give that power out to somebody else, because they want to control the movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which we are fighting very much. You know, that the director should not operate the camera, right? But if he wants to operate the camera, what can you do? I mean, he's the director. You let him do it. Let him screw it up. You know, that's our position. You know, many of them maybe, you know, they can operate the camera. You know, I mean, you know, there is operating and there is operating. You know, I mean.
Yeah, if you don't move it around too much, it's not as difficult as for our directors. So from doing those early movies, you graduated into bigger and bigger productions, and people started using you more. What sorts of things happened then? We were talking about after you know, you talked about McCabe and Mrs. Miller, and you talked about the movies after that. But you started.
Just The Long Goodbye, and I did Deliverance.
And then Deliverance,
with
yeah.
John Boorman, which was mostly an exterior movie with, I mean, going down to the rapids in Georgia.
Was that mostly lit by the sun, or did you bring in your own lighting for that?
Actually, mostly the exteriors mostly were lit by the sun, but there was a sequence in Deliverance where we had to use lights because there was a scene where we shot for 5 days. It's a long scene, and they kill a local guy. You know, I mean, Burt Reynolds kills the guy
with his arrow, yeah.
With his arrow, and he dies. And now there is this big discussion what to do with the body. You know, how to get away with the murder, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You know, true, that guy was after them, so.
Oh, it was self-defense.
So it would be very difficult to explain to the authorities that why did they have to kill him? Why didn't they just capture him and give it to the police department? So it was a big discussion and very philosophical discussions, and everybody has a different opinion. And until they decide that they will bury the guy, you know, and then put a lot of rocks, you know, over because they knew that the whole area is going to be flooded by
Mm-hmm.
water, and the body is going to disappear, you know. So we only had good light in the heavy forest actually, where we shot during noon hours.
Mm-hmm.
So between 11 and 1, we had nice filtered light coming through the trees. But from morning until 11 and afternoon after 1, we didn't really have any sunshine coming through there. So we actually used some xenon lights, which just came out in those days, you know, xenon
Mm-hmm.
equipment, and we used 2 or 3 of those xenon lights, and we broke up the light, you know, with some tree branches, and that basically duplicated the filtered light, you know, what we were getting during the midday hours, and that way we could keep the continuity, the
Mm-hmm.
matching quality of light all day for 5 days. And especially, we had a couple of overcast days actually, and with the lights we could actually survive, you know, that way too, even during the noon hours. So that was basically the only time when we really had to use heavy lighting equipment, and it was painful because everything had to go down by jeep through a dirt road, because all the movie was shot by the river.
Mm-hmm.
And we traveled with rubber boats actually and canoes down the river and stopped wherever we wanted to shoot. We stopped and then set up the cameras and shot then and moved to the next location and to the next location. So one day maybe we shot 4 different locations down the river. But this particular scene I was talking about played in one place for 5 days.
Well, sounds arduous and difficult. Now, when you set up a movie, when you read a script, does it lend itself to a technique that you then bring back to the director, to the production company, and say, "I'd like to shoot it this way"? Is this how it works with you now, where you start to see a look from the script itself? How does that work for you? Do you?
Well, it's basically when you read the screenplay, you probably visualize certain things actually. You can maybe see the movie when you are reading a screenplay. But before you basically start out on your own, you would like to discuss things with the director because I don't want to go into a different direction than the director wants to go.
Mm-hmm.
And a good director would have a certain style in mind, a certain way to shoot a movie. So you have to sit down and discuss it and you know, during 4 or 5 days or maybe 2 weeks of talking about the whole movie, you might come up with the look of the picture that you'd like to do. So the production designer can actually go ahead and build the sets and design the the size of the sets, design the colors and all that, which all have to be decided basically beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, many pictures what I have done in the past and other people have done, we come into the movie too late.
Mm-hmm.
Because many times, the director is hired like a year before the picture starts. Production designer is hired 6 months before the picture starts. Cameraman is hired maybe 4 weeks before it starts.
If he's lucky.
If he's lucky. Now, maybe by that time we don't have much choice. The only choice what we have is what they present you. And then within that, we have to make our choices what we can do. As far as lighting goes, as far as what can be, maybe, but if we don't like something, we won't light it maybe. I mean, things like that we can do.
Mm-hmm.
It would be so much easier if cameramen would be involved with the project from day one, like in Europe it is actually. Ingmar Bergman, Sven Nykvist, they did, I don't know how many made pictures together, 10, 15, I don't know. And they were together since day one, and they did it, everything together, they planned everything out. It doesn't exist here as much, I try to make it happen by offering my services months and months before the picture starts, and do a sort of non-continuous pre-production, which means that I work 2 days and then I go into a commercial or I go vacationing and then come back again a couple of weeks later when they can show me something, all locations, I spend another couple of days. So we just keep accumulating the days, and at the end, they pay me for the days what I spend on pre-production. It's a much better way to go actually, because you feel like that your contribution is bigger that way, and then many directors like that actually, if we can contribute from the very beginning.
So do you try to devise a color palette for a given movie and a given place to use a certain color scheme? Is this how you work in your planning?
It's interesting enough actually. There are some production designers who will do that.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes they don't do it until we come in and we start talking about, and then maybe we come up with the ideas that wouldn't that be nice if we would just use muted colors for everything else except the star would have, I don't know, a red dress or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
So these are the things, which cameramen can help, from designing things. Like I remember a scene, in Cinderella Liberty, where the story starts actually with Jimmy Kahn, who is a sailor, walks into a bar and meets Marsha Mason. Marsha Mason is basically a local hooker who is has a lot of friends, you know, and then Jimmy Kahn eventually fall in love with this hooker. Now, the way to present Marsha Mason the first time when Jimmy Kahn actually sees her is that we are in a very dark bar. It's really dark, and there's a door which leads to a pool room, which is very bright because there's a pool light lighting up the pool table.
Mm-hmm.
And there is Marsha Mason with this beautiful, wonderful red dress which sticks out from the whole shot, you know, like that the eye has to go and see right away there. So that's how we actually presented, you know, the look for Jimmy Canyon to see her right away. So these are the things, you know, which the idea can come from a director, can come from a production designer, sometimes can come from a cinematographer. You know, the beauty of making movies is that it's a collaborative effort. And many times you will see a movie, you will not know that who did what. You don't know whose idea was that, you know.
Mm-hmm. But the team did it.
Yeah, the team did it. And you know, as Mark Ryder, you know, said it always that he likes to be open. He likes to be open, you know, for all suggestions. Because at the end, it will be all his credit. Because everybody will think that he came up with the idea. You know? So it's you know, the nice thing about it is that we need a lot of collaborators on the set, you know, and even an electrician come up with an idea, or a bit, or you know, anybody. It's a good idea.
Let's use it.
Why not?
Yes.
Why not? You know, and you know, everybody likes to work with directors, cinematographers who are open for ideas around them. You know, because you know, it's nice to have all the people around you feel that they are contributing to a project. It makes them happy. You know.
When did you first start using Panavision? Do you recall? Is it?
Well, let's see. That's an interesting question. I think the first time was Red Sky at Morning.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first.
It was probably when Panavision's camera. This is camera number 1, isn't it, guys?
Yes, it was actually. It was camera number 1, and it was. You know what? It was. You know what? I think Red Sky at Morning was shot with a Mitchell.
Okay.
As I remember, because we had a parallax.
Mm-hmm.
A parallax problem no, okay. I'm changing my mind. I think it was a Panavision.
Okay.
It was the first Panavision camera, because the way I remember was actually that the operator in a low angle position could not get behind the viewfinder.
Mm-hmm.
Because we didn't have, you know, those viewfinders that we have now in a camera that you can tilt it up, you can do anything, and you can look into the viewfinder in any position. In those days, you had to be lying down on the ground and look to the thing, and the operator couldn't do that because he was not used to it. I was used to it because in Hungary we shot with a reflex camera all the time, you know, and we shot in all kind of different positions, you know. So we were physically able to get behind that lens, you know, anytime you.
No matter the position it was in.
This operator tried all kind of things, you know, to do the shot, you know. He actually put a side finder, you know, like a parallax finder next to the Panavision camera. I used the mirror, you know. I looked through the mirror and into the side finder and tried to operate the camera. And I said, God, what a way to do it. He said, why don't you just let me operate the camera? I know how to do this. I said, no. He's the operator. He would not let me have the camera, you know, to operate. That was my first experience with Hollywood and the unions, you know, that I could not do the shot. I could have done it so easily, you know.
Well, Panavision brought a different level of equipment to the scene. They really changed things that way.
It was an incredible thing, you know, when Panavision came out, you know, with the first reflex camera, basically, you know. it was really a milestone in, as far as equipment goes, because in Europe we always use reflex cameras. We had the Debris French camera, which was a reflex camera, and in fact the early Debris you actually shot through the film.
Oh yes.
You know, the black and white films didn't have the heavy anti-halation
Backing, yeah.
backing. So you actually saw the film on
On the back side of it.
the emulsion.
Wow.
And that's how you compose the picture. I mean, the picture was so dark that you had to actually put a black cloth around your eyes, you know, for about a minute until you got used to the darkness. And that's how you operated the shots. It was quite incredible. But we used actually the reflex system. We never had a parallax finder like the Mitchell had. We could not be able to operate that way because the image was never the same, but you saw in the finder, then you get on the film, you had to guess what you are going to get. I mean, true that the Mitchell had the back over, so you could actually, on a rehearsal, you could see through the lens, and then, but after that, you know, you had to always compare what you saw in the parallax finder and you saw in the film, so you were just guessing basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell you, many times lights got into the shot. And
They guessed wrong.
what happened, you know?
Oh, yes.
And it was such an improvement once we got the television camera with the reflex finder, so you could really see the shot through it, knew exactly the way it's going to be on the screen.
Panavision is so much more than just a movement. It's a camera movement in the film to the gate, but it's the entire system. It's the way it's all put together, and it works as a system. And so it's really brought the ideas of having a full system to us and made us work a little better.
But you know, it evolved actually incredible through the years. You know, because the first Panavision cameras were very heavy. You know, they were as big as a Mitchell was.
Mm-hmm.
Basically. It was maybe lighter, but it was big. And then it was a long time before the Panaflex came along. You know, which became very small, and you could put the camera into the inside of a police car on Sugarland Express. You know, which Gottschalk was so wonderful because he gave me the first Panaflex camera to experiment with on that picture.
Oh, really?
And you know, he already warned me about it, that you are doing a picture in a police car, you need this camera. I said, okay, give it to me. Well, it's not ready yet. It's not ready yet. So actually what we did eventually, because we kept postponing the shooting the inside of the police car because the camera was not ready. So we kept, you know, for the end of the picture to do those shots. And finally I said, Robert, we cannot do those shots unless you are giving us the Panaflex. I said, well, you know what? I'm going to give you the prototype.
Mm.
So that's how we did those shots actually on Sugarland Express, you know, and we did the 360 around inside of the car with sound and everything, you know, that was really a first, you know, to be able to do that. Because otherwise we only could have done it with an Ariflex, and the sound would have to be dubbed in later, and Stephen was very insistent on, you know, that he wanted to have direct sound, you know, on those shots.
Well, have other improvements in lights and change your technique, or the film stocks that you're using, have they changed your techniques to the current, the way you're shooting these days? Have you shifted a little bit?
Well, you know, it's every new piece of equipment is going to make your life better, actually easier, you know, as a cameraman, like the HMI lights when they came out. I mean, it was such an improvement versus those brutes, the arcs, you know, what we used to use. Many times you had to stop working while they were putting a new coal into the,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and also they were smoking, and all those things. You know, the HMI lights were incredibly helping our job, actually. Not talking about the little cameras, using the little Panaflex, and everything became smaller, and we could actually shoot in a corner where you could not put the big old cameras in,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if you were shooting on location. And the film emulsions, you know, started to get more sensitive each year, you know. So, you know, in McCabe and Mrs. Miller, we had a film which was 50 ASC. Today now we have a film which is 500 ASC. And we are talking about, and maybe they're even working on a film, maybe it's going to be 2000 ASC, which is going to be incredible. I mean, each new innovation, new technique is going to make our job easier.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a problem with that also, because, if movie shooting is becoming so easy, there's a tendency that the producers would think that, oh, I don't need the cinematographer anymore, because anybody can actually shoot this movie, because he doesn't have to use any lights. He just, send them out, with no equipment, and he can shoot a movie with them. Which is maybe true. Maybe true, actually. If you select the locations right, and you shoot everything by a window, or by lights, existing lights, fluorescent lights or whatever, yes, you can shoot probably a movie available light. But the question is it going to be good for all kind of movies?
Mm-hmm.
It's maybe good for a documentary or a feature which has to have the documentary look. Maybe you can do that. But what about if you do a movie like The English Patient,
Mm-hmm.
or Dr. Zhivago, or Lawrence of Arabia? Would it work on those movies? I mean, this kind of an approach,
Yeah, narrative storytelling is very different than that.
I mean, to do an artistic picture, you have to have a cinematographer who knows about lighting and take away the existing light, actually, and bring your own light and create your own images, not just shoot there what is there, because that's not really art. Sometimes it can be art, but sometimes it's not. Most of the time it would not be art. In an artistic picture, you have to create your own look. And unfortunately, as I said, that I think we are losing the battle, actually, because many producers today, they don't think that good cinematography really sells more tickets.
It isn't a marquee event, unlike the movie star or the director sells the movie.
That's right. So we have a problem, and I don't know what's going to happen 10 years from now, because I don't know.
Vilmos, we've been talking for an hour already.
Really?
Yes. Can we take a break and then?
That would be great.
Okay, good. It's Okay, Vilmos, we're back. This is going along really well. We've covered a lot of areas, but one of the things that wanted to talk about was how you work with directors. How do you approach a director's take on a particular movie or on a particular scene? How do you, in a nice way, educate him to what you need to get pictorially to get the scene done right? How does it work for you?
Well, each director is different,
Mm-hmm.
like each cinematographer is different, In an ideal situation, like in Europe, director and cameraman work together, everything out, and there's no question, there's no ego problem, that whose idea is going to be, done in the film, because it's like a discussion which should happen before you are even on the set. So on the set, we should not have any discussions at all, because we are making the same movie. So I always believe that that I should photograph the director's movie. I really respect the director's position. Unfortunately, many times, the director is not up to his or her job, because maybe a new director just was a writer before and an actor before. Now, how do you deal with a director who doesn't have the education and experience to direct a movie? Now we have to be there and help the director out by helping staging the action, helping basically everything, what we know, because we are masters of telling a story visually.
Mm-hmm.
We know where the camera should go really in a certain scene in order to see everything what the audience wants to see, how far the camera has to be, how close it has to be, do we need any close-up, how is it going to cut together? We know the answer for this, because we are visually oriented. We know how to tell a story. No, many directors, luckily, they are also visually oriented and they know as much as we know and then even more. Only a few directors I found actually in my lifetime, who really knew everything, And sometimes it's a pain to work with those people because they will tell you exactly what they want, where the camera goes, and they even will tell you about the lighting if they don't like the lighting. Luckily, we only have very, very few of those kind of directors, and I hardly ever work with those. So I worked a lot, with the directors who were very open and they had great ideas, but then they didn't know how to accomplish it. They needed our contribution, and that's when I'm happy, when I feel like I'm helping to tell the story, And that's very important actually, that when this doesn't happen, if you have a person who is not your friend, you still have to be able to do your job, and in any case, you always have to remember that we are not directing the movie, we are only photographing the movie. So the director has the prerogative to do the staging the way he or she wants to do that, and we have no say-so about what the actor should do, and what the dialogue should be or something. We cannot meddle into that. That's something what the director's territory. And we are hoping that our territory is the lighting strictly, that we do the lighting. The director should not interfere with our lighting because we know more about lighting than they do. So if I could not put the camera where I want to, if I could not move the camera the way I would move it, I still have the lighting, I can be happy with it, because the lighting is the most important thing in any movie. Because the lighting creates the mood. Without the mood, there is no scene which will reflect that action at the scene, what is about. We creating the mood for that scene. And only we do this, with the help of the gaffer, the electricians, the grips and all that. So we can be very happy just lighting, like the English cameramen, they are very happy. Actually, just do the lighting. They are called lighting directors in England. The DPs are not even telling where the camera goes at all, because the director deals with the operator, and the director tells the operator where the camera should go. So, but they're still happy that they can do the lighting, which is the most important thing actually in any cinematographer's life is the lighting.
So, working with a director, you try to show them how the scene should work, how a scene should play. Maybe start as a wide shot, maybe then work over into coverage and over. How does that work?
Well, it's a funny thing. It happened with Mark Slidell. Very many times I did 4 pictures with Mark. And then usually the way it starts, that we have a rehearsal with the actors, right? We are in a set, and the actors are rehearsing. Now the actor will get up, go to the window, or go to the door, or whatever action is. Now, and at that moment, our mind starts thinking about either where the camera would be the best to see the action. And many times the crew was always laughing that I was, for example, on this side of the room watching the action, and Mark Slidell was at the other side of the room watching the action from there, and he was, showing this and this. I could not do this because I'm not the director. I was just quiet, and then he saw me over there, and at the end of the rehearsal, he says, I saw you over there. And he said, is it better over there? I said, Mark, you have to come over here and watch the scene again. Then we go again, rehearse again, and Mark would be there and I would be there, but he was. So we exchanged basically the ideas, that how something would look from here to there. But then, if we find that, let's say, both of them are equal, now comes for me to decide that which is easier to handle as far as coverage goes, as far as lighting goes. And it's very important that we select actually the angles and the coverage which is the easiest to light and gives you the best result in lighting. And if a director is not that firm about his or her position, I can go to them and say, hey, you know, if we do this, and I tell them it's not because it was my idea, it's not about ego, it's not about, you know, that who does what, but if you do this, you are going to save 2-3 hours. You know, sometimes you can save that much. Because the way I like to light is that I like to light the biggest shot of a sequence, the biggest shot which takes the longest time to light. And then usually I can prepare that. That's why I select that shot first, because I can do that even the night before. As maybe a rigging crew is going to be rigging the lights already, what we need the next morning, and we come in an hour or 2 hours earlier, we rig the lights for the big shot. Now, the director sometimes would say, I don't want to start to shoot with a big shot because I could not care less. I don't even think it's maybe going to end up in a picture. Which is many times it's true that the big long shots don't end up in a picture. But we still have to do it, just in case if it ends up in a picture. So I will light for that, and then start with whatever shot the director wants to shoot into that direction. And you know, we usually light into the direction first where most of the shots are. So let's say that if we have a sequence and we would break it down into 20 shots, 15 are going to be into one direction, 5 is going to be a reverse shot. And mostly the big shots are going to be into the direction where the 15 shots are. The reverses can be tighter shots, so it's easier to do reverses with less shots, especially if they are tighter. With this method, you can save a lot of time, and many directors appreciate that. And you know, the good thing about this is if you should light the big shot first, that everything is going to match. Every single shot, because you know exactly what the long shot is going to be. You know where the light is coming from, whether it comes from windows or light sources or whatever. You know exactly the look of the big scene, and then you can light the close-ups much easier because you already have a plan that what the lighting should look like.
And so when you get into your close-up, do you clean it up a bit? Do you alter it somewhat?
Yes, sometimes you would do. I mean, sometimes, you know, especially if you have big paid actresses, you know, they want to look good in their close-ups, you know. You just don't, you know, zoom in with a long lens and shoot in a shot, you know, which is not lit right for the close-up. But you have to maintain actually the direction of the light. And that's the important thing, that at that time you already have to know that where the close-up is going to be lit from. So on a long shot, it has to be lit from there already. So he cannot jump in, you know, and then change the light on an actor's face because it will not match. So yes, you clean up a little bit the close-ups. You bring in a little bit of a fill light, you know, the eye light. You want to see the actor's eyes, you know, when they are that close. On a long shot, you don't have to see the eyes. But in a close-up, you want to see the expression on their faces.
Do you cheat the actors a little bit left and right to find a better background?
Of course, you can cheat, you know, as much as you can get away with it, and you always cheat a lot. And I know directors are very hesitant sometimes, you know, to cheat, and you have the skip supervisor who are really giving us a hard time, you know, sometimes.
For matching.
They are matching a Polaroid.
Yes, yes.
They don't know that we are going to be cutting this, you know, that it's not going to be a direct cut. I try to tell them that it's not going to be a direct cut. It never matches the direct. You have to get to a reverse first, and then you can do anything you want to do. But you know, we have all these discussions because everybody is important on the set. The skip supervisor is very important for matching purposes, and but many times you have to cheat in order to get better results. You know?
Well, yes, a background is better a little bit over left or right. A scene plays better cheating. Do you ever have to really go to an extreme and place your actors in this same spot, for instance, or any, you know, to come around so that you don't have to totally relight everything, just shift them over a little bit?
Well, you try not to do that too much because, you know, I mean, for us it's very important that the actors feel comfortable with the position they are in, you know. And if you have a certain close-up in your mind and you know that a certain actor has to be in that position to the close-up, you already would like to do it in a master shot if you should start with that to be sure that the actor is going to end up in that position. But as far as restrictions, I don't like to restrict the actors, Many times I would just move the furniture around, but during the rehearsals, so the actor will find a place, by just going into that piece of furniture.
Mm-hmm.
And that way they don't feel, that they are restricted and they have to get into a mark.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with Sterling Hayden, who's a great actor, but he was terrified of movies because he had a hard time to hit marks.
Mm-hmm.
And he hated that, when they had to repeat the shot because he would not hit a mark. So I actually, what I did on the long goodbye with him, that I really put chairs and tables moved around a little bit, so he could not go any other place. He had to go there, He had to go there. And I never told him where to go, We had a mark probably for the assistant cameraman, so know where the focus mark was. And at the end of the movie, he came to me and said, this was such a pleasant experience for me, because I never had to think about my marks, what I had to hit. Because he was terrified. He told me that he was always terrified and could not perform because of that, because of hitting marks.
So the part of the technique is moving your surroundings to fit the actor.
Exactly. If the actor feels like needs a movement or something, then you have to accommodate that, it's easy to move furniture around because, even if the script supervisor says, well, the table was not there, never mind, we don't see that.
Use of atmosphere, smoke and dust is something that you're also, especially on Heaven's Gate, when all the big scenes of that. Is that a difficult technique to you can't just throw it around? You have to really make sure it settles in a nice fog. Do you use a lot of the atmospheres?
I don't really like to use smoke, as fog. It's very unhealthy actually. I know that crew members, they test it so much, when you have to work all day, sometimes for weeks in a foggy situation. It really has to worth it, when you do that. It really has to add that much plus, into the picture to do it. I know in Heaven's Gate we did some nice scenes, with fog, but it was worth it,
Mm-hmm.
because it added to the old feelings, to the sets, because in those days, it was a lot of smoke, atmosphere, from stoves and cigarette smoking and pipe smoking, and
Mm-hmm.
it was justified. But today, when hardly anybody smokes, when I see a scene, when I see the light rays coming through the window in the smoke,
Mm-hmm.
when I always want to laugh, I say, where is the smoke coming from? Nobody's smoking. Where is it coming from? It looks ridiculous, And many cinematographers still use it.
Yes.
And I get to the point where I don't want to use it unless it's really necessary for the storytelling, Because otherwise it becomes just false. It's not real. And I like to shoot real movies. I like to the audience, feel that it's happening. It's real. It's not fantasy. Of course, you can do pictures which is about fantasy, romantic fantasy. Then you can go berserk and then do it if you want to do that, because everybody thinks it's a movie. It's not real. But how many pictures we make like that?
Mm. Well, one of the last films you made, The Ghost in the Darkness, last one we've seen, it was a big adventure movie about lions. And talk about that for just a second. Was that a nighttime shooting? This is your current techniques of how you shoot.
The Ghost in the Darkness was a very real story, even if it played actually a long time ago. Actually,
Mm-hmm. It was a period piece.
Yeah, it was a period piece. I don't know exactly, probably turn of a century or something like that. And as such, we decided to shoot it very real.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember using any smoke at all. First of all, we were in South Africa, and you have no windows there. Everything is open. It's hot there. There are no windows. Yeah, we have a hard time to create smoke with open windows. It's not possible because the smoke keeps moving around and things like that. It doesn't work. True, we have fires that create smoke and all, but that's not the atmosphere that we are talking about. So the important thing that goes to the darkness was really is the light sources.
Mm-hmm.
What is going to be the light source in a period piece? We had to create the light sources. We know that they needed a lot of fire because
Firelight?
the firelight actually kept the lions away, because our lions are afraid of fire. So that was actually very realistic to have a lot of bonfires.
Mm-hmm.
And we created the light sources that was actually the legitimate light source on the people. And of course we had kerosene lanterns and candles and things like that, which is legitimate, in a picture. And we just followed basically realistic light sources.
Did you then use an artificial fire? I mean, off of camera, of course, but a flicker from an artificial light to.
Well, you know what I usually do, and that I don't know where I learned this actually. I don't know when I started to use that, but I use usually photo floods around the fire, usually on the opposite side of the fire, where it's covered by the logs, and
Mm-hmm.
so we don't see the light bulbs. And I put them on a flicker machine, which gives you a flicker. And usually those lights are giving you more flicker than the fire light really does. So in order to make it realistic, actually, I use 50% of each. I use regular lights which are not flickering, and I use some lights which are flickering. So the two, when it adds together, the flicker is less obvious and just gives you the reality of the fire effect.
Of the flames.
But not overdone. I hate everything, but it's overdone. If you overdo something, it's not realistic. I mean, you see a candle on a table, and you see the candle light, it's not moving at all. It's no wind blowing or something. And many people would do a flicker with that. No, where is that coming from?
Yeah.
It's not real. It cannot be real. So why make it unreal? I mean, that's always my idea about lighting. It has to look real.
We're getting towards the end of your time, and I know you have to leave pretty soon, but if you could leave us with a thought about your motivation toward, how do you motivate a scene? And do you see the motivation in reading the script, and how do you then, as a overall, do you see it by reading the script, and how do you envision it?
It part of it is reading the script. Second part of it is talking to your collaborators, like the director. And many times you get ideas when you see a rehearsal with the actors. It's all very important that we are telling a story. And sometimes it's very difficult for us to see how we should shoot that scene unless we know what the actors are doing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very important, that we all work together.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good advice. We will try to follow that whenever we can. It's very important. Listen, this has been delightful. I mean, you've given us another great interview, VILMOZ. You've given us a lot of insight to how we do our next projects. Thank you for having us out again.
Very welcome.
Well, and we'd like to again thank Panavision for allowing us to use their facilities here and put their camera behind us. And thank you, Panavision. And we'll just we'll keep making those movies.
By the way, that the demonstration what they had here last night for us, it was just a mind blower. That how many new things are coming out. And
a lot of new stuff coming up, isn't there?
It's really incredible to see the future. It's almost frightening. That how much easier it is going to shoot pictures in the future than it is today.
Well, is there any comment that you saw that was really impressive?
Well, that computer, for example, which you can record all the cameras on the set,
mm-hmm.
up to 4 cameras. And you record it, and you can play back any camera at any time. And in fact, you can cut them together.
You can edit on the set and see how the scene looks like. Oh.
And it's just amazing how much easier it's going to be, for directors to see if they are doing the right thing and how things cut together. That was one thing which really impressed me yesterday. Of course, the new camera which is coming out.
Mm-hmm.
can't even remember what the name is for the new camera.
What is it? The Millennium?
Millennium.
The Millennium camera, yes. It's
That looks like it's a great camera. I mean, it looks like it has a built-in, a lot of things are built in, you know, which we didn't have before. And that's going to be great, you know, when it comes out, you know.
and we're going to be shooting 35 millimeter for a long time to come.
Well, I still think, you know, that nothing is as good as originating images from 35 millimeter film, and even if you will manipulate the films, you know, through digital post-production, even let's say that if in the future they invent projections which are not going to be film projections, you know, it could be video projections, if they ever get as good an image as the film projector give you today, you know, which is an incredible image. If they solve that problem, we still, I think, we will be shooting on 35 millimeter film, because nothing is going to be better, you know, for a long time than 35 millimeter film as a original.
Absolutely.
It has the archaic quality, you know, or not archaic,
Archival quality.
Archival quality, which means that, you know, if it's stored right, you know, we can always go back and have it, which video doesn't have it. Digital probably has it, but again, it doesn't have the quality yet what we can go up. I mean, you cannot store everything in 4,000 lines digital. I mean, I don't know what's going to take to store all films and everything in those digital images. I think they will take rooms and warehouses and all that, you know, which film is pretty small, I mean, in comparison to that, you know.
Well, the quality of film is remarkable. It's got that.
It's an incredible quality, really, but and it's getting better every year, every 2 years. Eastman Kodak brings out a new film, and we are just thinking about it. Why didn't we have this 10 years ago? See, I remember even 20 years ago, we had to reshoot half a day's work when we forgot to put the 85 filter on the camera. It was ruined. Because the laboratories could not print it back to normal. It was ruined.
It was far too blue.
And in the afternoon we had to reshoot first what we missed in the morning, because the assistant cameraman thought the 85 filter was in the back of the lens and it wasn't. And then we had to really hurry to finish it before the sun went away. That was what, 20 years ago? Today, sometimes you don't put the 85 filter on. The laboratory prints it back. You overexpose the film 2 stops, nothing to it. They print it back to normal. Doesn't even look like you overexposed it, you know. And you try sometimes to create a different looking image by overexposing. It doesn't look different. So you have a struggle how to make it look different.
Yes.
The films are so good, yeah.
Well, you will continue to make our films look wonderful. Thank you. And Vilmos, we'll see you soon. Bye-bye then. Thank you. Well, I'll just